Controversial.
Excuse me?
The first, a controversial and powerful work.
Okay, Ruby.
Unflinching honesty.
Good morning, Rav Moshe Yosef.
Oh, good book.
So I take the
They're getting out of Yom Malacha.
Arab Yom Malacha.
Yeah, Labor Day.
Labor Day.
Why do they call it Labor Day? Half the country's closed, not
Right.
Because,
The state is.
no people don't have anything to do with winter nights, and now the women going for labor.
There you go.
That was even worse than my joke. I'm who's tomorrow do you have?
I don't know. Who is this yours?
No. No, okay. Yeah, I found it, okay.
Morning, Jeff. Good morning. How are you today, Ruben?
Well,
Thank you.
I forgot which president it was, but one of the presidents had a lot of trouble with working people. And then they all of a sudden passed some laws that favored working people, and they set up labor.
Well, Sunday's not a Labor Day anyhow. Sunday's a day of rest.
It's a day to honor workers.
Mm-hmm. I can make it on Monday.
What about those that are on the dole? Do they on it?
Those are like the people in Lakewood.
They're not on the dole, their wives support them.
Some of them.
Excuse me, there is not a federal program that they don't love. And then they vote Republicans because they want to take away all those programs.
All right, let's get started with our.
They figured out why should the blacks keep getting living at the public,
Yeah.
so they'll get some too.
Well, who like to be compared to them?
Huh?
Never mind. Okay,
Please.
gentlemen, let's get involved with a little more Torah than that. Okay. I assume Harvey should be coming in and Erwin, right?
We're missing a lot of people.
Harvey was in show and Erwin was in show. Right? Takes a couple minutes for them to get in. Okay, learning sponsors. Year of Learning, Friends of Nina Monesta, Nechama Asna Bad Yitzchak Aharon, many friends of Stephen Vigdil, Zecha Nishmat Simcha Melech Ben Meir Leib Halevi, friends of Marcy Kurtz in memory of her great niece Leah Bracha Bas Rivka, Isaac and Evelyn Blachor in memory of his sister Chaya Rachel Bas Esther Iser. A month of learning by Gary and Marcia Schrager in memory of his father David Ben Yosef and his mother Freda Bas Hendel. Marcia Federbush in memory of her husband Oriel Pinchas Ben Arav Shuman. Andrea and David Dolney in memory of her father Tzvi Herschel Hillel Ben Avraham. Dov Budlander in memory of his father Tzvi Ben Yaakov Yitzchak, his mother Bela Devasha Bas Harav Dov Berish, his father-in-law Yehuda Tzvi Ben David Nachum, and his mother-in-law Alta Chaya Bas Avram Yosef. Finally got it. I told you, I checked with him yesterday. That's the correct name. Week of Learning by Michael and Judy Poretsky in memory of his father, Gershon Ben Chaim Tzvi, by Judy Iger in memory of her son, Yerachmeel Ben Aaron, and today, the 4th of September, a day of learning by Judah Klein in memory of his father, Chaim Ben Chenek. We're also keeping in mind still Peret Semach Ben Yaakov Yitzchak for a Refuah Shlema, and Moshe Reuven Ben Sima Tabela for the Bachur for a Refuah Shlema. Shema have an Aliyah, Crank Rafia Velti Yeshua Shema Tliya, L'chol b'nei Israel a good gebench.
Amen.
That's strong.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Shove those tissues over, please.
What's that?
Shove the box of
Tissues. Right?
I like water.
You do? You're not nursing anybody though, so you don't have to worry about it. All right?
Gotcha.
This is okay. Today's Gemara, while it's not real difficult per se, it is long. Okay, so we'll try to move right along, so to speak. Okay, and okay, we're really going to start on the very bottom of 59b. There's a B3, B4, whatever it is in Art Scroll, right?
Three.
B3, that's what I was going to guess. Okay. All right. What happened to Irwin?
It's pre-library.
Okay. Okay. All right. So the Gemara is giving us, first it gave us all of these, a definition of various malachas that the wife is supposed to be doing in the household. Talked about the Mishnah in terms of she brings in servants. Then the Gemara goes on to clarify some of this malacha, and is going to give us today a rather interesting reminder. I hate to say it, but we'll see. It reminds me of the lineup when they want to identify.
Exactly what it is.
I know, but I'm saying that's exactly the thought that came to my mind. If you ever seen police shows where they want somebody to identify the one who committed the crime, and they have different people line up, okay, that's what it reminded me of in today's Gemara. You'll see in a moment. Okay. 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 Im hayama kira. So the question is, if the infant would, okay, the implication of the Mishnah was that if the infant recognizes, okay, that woman is his mother. Okay, so the question now, we start in Samach Amud Aleph. Okay, right? Samach Amud Aleph is today's daf. Ad kama. At what point? At what age, basically, the Gemara wants to know, can we say that a child is going to recognize who his mother is? Okay. Okay. Amar Rabba, Amar Rav Yomia Bar Abba Amar Rav. So he suggests this as follows: Shlosha chodashim, 3 months old. Okay. Ushmuel Amar Shloshim Yom, and Shmuel says 30 days. Okay. The Rabbi Yitzchak Amar Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yitzchak in the name of Rabbi Yochanan says Chamishim Yom, 50 days. Okay, so that's considerable. We see a broad distinction here. Okay, 3 months would be basically 90 days. Okay, so you've got from 30 days to 50 days to 90 days. Okay, what happens? Amar Rav Simi bar Abaye, he says as follows: Halacha Rabbi Yitzchak she'amar mishum Rabbi Yochanan. He claims, Rabbi Simi bar, right? Bar Abaye, that the law is like Rabbi Yitzchak, all right, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, which would be the 50-day parameter. Okay, what happens? So that's, so to speak, almost I want to say it's the compromise between the two. Bishlema Rav Rabbi Yochanan, right? Why? The same, okay, for them. Kol chad v'chad ki chorfei. Okay, what they're really saying is that it depends on the intelligence, okay? In other words, based on each one, what they saw was the level of recognition and intelligence of the child as to whether they can recognize the mother. Ela l'shmuel, ki hai gavna. Okay, but in Shmuel, given the case that he suggests, mi mishkachet la, is it possible for a child that's only 1 month old to really recognize its mother? Okay. Chi ata Rami bar Yecheskel amar, and when Rami bar Yecheskel came, he says, lo titzitainhu lahani klale dekayo lihuda achi mishmei de Shmuel. Don't pay attention. I'm going to translate that, or don't listen, but I like pay attention better. Okay, to the rules or regulations, those principles that were included by my brother Yehuda in the name of Shmuel. In other words, don't pay attention to anything that he says in the name of Shmuel. Okay, Hachi amar Shmuel. This is what Shmuel, so to speak, actually said. Kol zman shemakira. Anytime that, based on when the child is able to recognize the mother. Okay, so what happens? Okay, now we get another example. Okay, and on what do we base this? The following story, right? Namely, here we go. Okay, Hahi da'atai lekame de Shmuel. There was a certain woman who did not wish to nurse her child. Okay, and she came before Shmuel, right? Amarle the Rav Dimi bar Yosef, and Shmuel said to his attendant, all right, Rav Dimi bar Yosef, Zil Badka, go and check it out. Okay, Azal, he went. Odva bedare dinashe, and he had the woman stand in a row of other women, a lineup, so to speak. V'shakle lebra, u'kimahader le alayhu, and he took the child, and he basically went along the line, holding the child, and had the child look at the face of each of the women. Okay, right? What was happening? Kimata legaba, when he came to this particular woman, right? Havet ka misave laape. The child looked into the face of the woman, right? And what happened? Okay, kav shetenhai le'ene mine, and the woman averted her eyes from looking at the child. Amar la, he said to her, nataf enech, lift up your eyes. Kum dare barech, come and take your child. In other words, you have responsibility to, child has recognized you as its mother, and therefore you have responsibility to nurse the child. So the Gemara therefore asks, given this example, okay, that the child looks into the face of the mother and recognizes her, Suma manabiyada, a child that is blind, how is it going to recognize the mother? Okay, the answer, says the Gemara, Amar Ravashi, says Ravashi, Berecha uvetama. He would recognize her by her odor and by the taste, by the okay, of the milk, for that he would.
Milk, her breast itself, the flesh of her breast.
Okay, that's one shot. I had a different shot. I would have the milk. Okay, all right, that's the difference. Anyway, the point is, okay, in other words, you utilize other senses, the child would be able to recognize her by other means. Okay.
The child is recognizing mother, but if it's a mother who really doesn't want this child,
That's a problem.
she could-
Doesn't want to nurse the child. Okay.
the child
Well,
could be turned off and not-
Who knows? We'll go on more in the Gemara. And I think we'll have another example, Ted, that will address that situation even more. Okay? You've got to remember, okay, as we go through the Gemara, okay, that our Mishnah, remember that our Mishnah said that if she brought in certain number of servant girls, one of them could be a wet nurse for the child.
Only
Okay.
that takes all of his road. So
All right, so keep that in mind, that, okay, all right. and we're going to get to that again. We're going to get to that topic in more detail. Okay. All right. So what happens? Tanu Rabbanan, we get to a new Brighton. Yonek Tinok v'holech ad esrim v'arba'a chodesh. Okay, according to the Breita, the child would suckle for a time period of up to 2 years. Okay. Mikan ve'elech kiyonek sheketz, divrei Rabbi Eliezer. After that point, it's as if the child is nursing from an abomination, abominable creature. That's the view of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Yoshua Omer, he says as follows, Afilu arba'a v'chamesh shanim, even up to 4 or 5 years of age. All right? Peresh la'achar esrim va'arba'a chodesh. And if the child, I'm going to say stops or refrains for after the 2 years, all right? V'chazar kiyonek sheketz, and then afterwards continues, then it is like nursing from an abomination creature. A marmar, and the master said what we said as follows: Mikan ve'elech kiyonek sheketz. From this point on, that's when it's like nursing from an abomination. We're minhei, but we'll raise a contradiction to this with the following: Yechol yehei chalev mahalchei shtayim tamei. It's possible that we might think that the milk of something that goes on 2 legs, namely women, people, right? Women, tamei could be tamei, vidinhu, and we could make a gezerah shava.
Kal v'chomer.
Kal v'chomer. Okay, kal v'chomer here, I'm sorry. Right? Ma uma behema shehikalt b'maga'a. Right? Hechmarta b'chalva. The same way in regards to an animal, where we were lenient in regards to its contact, but we were more stringent in regards to its milk. Adam, a person, shehechmarta b'maga'o, where you're more stringent in regards to contact with the person. Why? Because you could become tamei with a contact with certain people. Okay? Eino din shetachmir b'chalvo. Is it not logical that we should be more stringent with that milk? Right? Talmud lomar. Therefore, the text tells us et hagamal ki ma'ale gerahu. When we're talking, yeah. Okay. Right? Okay, with regarding the camel, okay, and we say that it chews its cud, all right? It, when we're referring to the it, hu tamei ve'ein chalev mahalchei shtayim tamei. It, in other words, the animal itself is tamei. There, but and the camel's milk in this case would be permitted. Okay,
Would be tamei.
tamei. Okay.
The point of this is if you can't eat the meat, you can't drink the milk. Because the pasuk says that if you can't eat the camel because it doesn't have to.
Only a camel, but not a person.
Right.
Milk.
That's the implication of the right at the end. Okay. So here, kimale gerahu, we're saying it. In other words, it is tamei, ve'ein chelev mahalchei shtayim tamei, but the milk of a 2-legged being, namely the woman, is not. Ela tahor, but rather it's tahor. So we now make the following thought. Yachol otziet achelev she'eno shaveh b'kol. I might have thought that I would exclude, okay, the milk of something that is not common to all. V'lo otziet hadam shehu shaveh b'kol. But I wouldn't exclude blood that is common to all. Talmud lomar, again, I use the expression here, who, it, namely, who tamei, ve'ein dam mehalchei shtayim tamei. Okay, it is tamei, but the blood of a 2-legged being is not tamei. Okay, so why is this important? Ela tahor, but rather it is tahor. So what is the implication of this? Okay, we're going to see as the Gemara goes on. Okay, Koren's explanation dealt with also the situation of somebody has a wound, could they suck the blood from the wound?
Or the
Okay.
vampire.
Okay, well, I didn't discuss that in Koren. Okay, maybe Art
You're
Scroll
allowed to be
does.
an Orthodox vampire. The Gemara is clear.
Okay, Va'amar Rav Sheshet. And Rav Sheshet says as follows: Afilu mitzvat prisha ein bo. Okay, so even the command regarding refraining, there's not implication here. Lo kasha, it's not a problem. Had the parish. In one case, we're talking about the situation where the breast milk is separated.
Blood.
Okay, all right. The had the low parish. And in another case where it's not separated. All right. The chalufa badam, and the opposite situation is regards to the blood. Kedetanya. Okay, as we explain in the following brayta, dam sha'al gabe kikar. If there's some blood on a loaf of bread, gororo, you scrape it off, ve'ochlo, and then you can eat that piece, some bread. Shabein hashinayim, or if there's some blood that comes from one's gums and it's along their teeth, motzotzo ve'eno choshesh. One can, if you want to say suck it, all right, absorb it, and one doesn't have to be concerned about being problematic there. Amar mar, and we say as follows. Rabbi Yoshua Omer, he says as follows: Afilu arba v'chamesh shani. He referred to the fact that a child up till 4 or 5 years of age could still suckle. Vahatanya, but haven't we learned elsewhere in a brayta? Okay, Rabbi Yoshua Omer, he says, Afilu chavilato al ketefav. Even if the child is old enough to carry a knapsack, so to speak, to carry a package on its shoulders, and a child of 4 or 5 years old can
So the implication is that it's
carry
older.
that. Okay, all right. Ide ve'ide chad shi'urahu. No, this isn't a disagreement between them. It's really the same
Him,
measurement.
it's not them. He
Okay.
said both things.
No, it's
Yeah,
two
Rabbi
different
Yeshua
men.
said both.
Rabbi Yoshua said one thing, all right, and Rabbi Yoshua says
Rabbi
the other
Yeshua
thing.
said both.
And saying both items are really the same measure. Okay? Amar Rav Yosef says as follows: Halacha ke Rabbi Yoshua, and the law is like Rabbi Yoshua. Okay, let's go on.
Dad, a woman in Staten Island nursing her kid at 5 years old.
Well, so she's
For
in a
real?
low
Yeah.
Okay,
Her husband taught her this Gemara.
all right.
Why
I-
pay for Similac when
I don't
you've
know.
got mommy?
Okay. Anyway,
But she also gave birth in front of all her children. And it was
all right. Difficult. One.
difficult to do. I know what you're talking about.
Tanya, a new brayta. Rabbi Marinus, okay, Omer, he says as follows: Goneach. We're talking about a situation where, according to one pshat, the child was caught, or the coughing
This
up
is an
blood,
adult.
or a person, adult. Okay, according to the other, it was somebody groaning. Okay, so it's somebody who
From
is.
a chest.
So the implication clearly is the person is in difficult health situation. Okay, well, however shot we take, one is based on Rashi, one on a different. Okay, what happens there? Yonek chalav b'Shabbat is able to suckle milk, okay, on Shabbos, and the implication is they suckle directly from the goat. All right, what happens? Why is that? My tama. On what basis could you say this is possible and permittable even on Shabbos? That's our implication. Yonek, all right, right? What happens? Miperik kilachar yad, okay, ubamakom tzara lo gazru rabbanan. Okay, that this method of suckling directly from the animal on Shabbos is kilachar yad, is not the common method which would be prohibited by the rabbis normally in as a toleda of a certain kind of malach.
Mefarek. It says,
Okay.
Mefarek.
Okay, all right. So what happens? All right. Okay, and therefore, in this situation, because of the suffering, lo gazru rabbanan, the rabbis did not make a decree. Amar Rav Yosef, halakha, he says, halacha ka Rabbi Marinus, and therefore the law is like Rabbi Marinus. Okay, Tanya, a new bright, Nachum ish Galia, Omer, and he's Nachum from. One explanation said he came from Gaul. Okay, right, which is Frank. Well, we would normally call it France, a larger area there as well. Sinur sha'alu bo kashkashin. If we have a drain pipe and it became full of weeds, what, right? Mema'achan biraglo b'tzin'ah b'shabbat. That it's possible for one to stomp or crush down on it, okay, in private on Shabbat, ve'eno choshesh, and he does not have to be concerned about being over on Shabbos, right? My tama, what's the reasoning? Matakem kila'achar yad hu ubamakom pseda lo gazruba rabbanan. Okay, that even though he's doing some repair of it, okay, and this is kilachayad. This could be, we might think this is makeh patish, is the malacha, okay, but in this case, he's doing it as a toleda, might be over, but that's not the case, okay, in this situation. Why? But makom pseda, because there's a potential loss here. Lo gazruba rabbanan. The water would be overflowing the drain pipe. It could flow into the house. It could do all sorts of other damage, right? So that's the issue here. Okay, now let's go on. Amar Rav Yosef Rav Yosef halacha kinachum ish galia, and therefore the law is like Nachum ish galia. Okay, Peresh. Now we said, what happens if that child was nursing and then refrained for a while? Lachar esrim va'arba chodesh v'chazar. Okay, and it after, right?
It took a break.
Right, took after the 2 years and then returned to nursing. Kiyonek sheketz. Okay, that is, we said, was like nursing from an abomination. Vikama. And how long, asks the Gemara. Amar Rav Yehuda bar Chaviva Amar Shmuel. He says as follows: Shlosha Yamim, 3 days. Ikeda Amre, and others say Tane Rav Yehuda bar Chaviva Kame de Shmuel. That it wasn't Shmuel who said it, but it was Rav Yehuda bar Chaviva in front of Shmuel. Shlosha Yamim. Still said the same amount, 3 days. Tana Rabban. Okay. So now, right, we'll see. Mineket. Okay. Now we have a woman that is nursing a child. Shemet ba'ala b'toch esrim va'arba'a chodesh. And the husband died during the 2 years that she was nursing the child. Right? Harei zo lotit ares velo tinaseh. She is not permitted to either become betrothed or to become married. All right? What point? And we're going to see, says the Gemara, ad esrim va'arba'a chodesh. Okay? Until, right?
24 months.
Until 24 months.
From the birth of the child.
From the day the child was born. Okay?
Rabbi Green, I
They
think
didn't have
it
bottles.
would be
No
helpful
bread
to
with hand in
point
there,
out that
so the
this
kid could
next
eat.
section of Gemara is almost fundamental on rules of paskening. Reb Meir, Reb Yehuda passing like Reb
Okay.
Yehuda, Shammai Hillel, we passing like
Right,
Shammai.
right, okay.
And then, but we take into account.
All right. Okay. That, all right. yeah, I understand where you're coming from. Divrei Rabbi Meir. Okay, that's the view of Rabbi Meir. All right. Now the question is, I'm going to ask, does everybody accept that view that a nursing mother must wait that long? Question we would ask, right, as I see on Ted's face, is why, right, are you saying that she has to wait that long before becoming engaged or married? I might understand, as I'm going to lead into the next piece of Gemara, that if she's married, okay, during that time she could become pregnant. And if she becomes pregnant, could that affect her milk flow? Okay, that's our initial question. Okay, I could go further and say even more so. If she becomes pregnant and gives birth, could that affect the child from a previous husband? Okay, so
it doesn't address that.
I know it doesn't address. Okay,
The only issue.
okay. So let's see what happens. Let's see what the Gemara.
24 months. If the husband died,
During the 24 months. Rabbi Meir is saying she cannot either become betrothed or remarry.
until 24 months from her child.
From the time the child was
In
born.
other words, the kid's entitled to 24 months.
So if he died 23 months after,
His marriage.
She can get married a month and a half later.
Right?
it's from the time the child.
Was born. Okay, so let's go on. But we're going to see there's a different view besides Rabbi Meir's view. Okay, the Rabbi Yehuda matir b'shmona asar chodesh, and Rabbi Yehuda, sorry, permits it after the child was born, 18 months. Okay, Amar Rabbi Natan bar Yosef. What does he say? Hein hein divrei Beit Shammai. Hein hein divrei Beit Hillel. Namely, one view belongs to the Beit Shammai view. Okay, one view belongs to the Beit Hillel view. Shebeit Shammai omrim, the Beit Shammai says, esrim ba'arba chodesh, the 24-month period. Ubeit Hillel omrim, shmona asar chodesh. And Beit Hillel says it's the 18-month situation. Now we've got another citation. Amar Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. What does he say? Ani achriya. I will determine what the practice is going to be. L'divrei ha'omer esrim ba'arba'a chodesh. According to those who hold, like Beit Shammai and Rabbi Meir, that it's the 24 months. Muteret l'naseh be'esrim ve'echad chodesh. She's actually permitted to marry after 21 months. The divrei ha'omer b'shmona asar chodesh, and according to those who hold by Beit Hillel and Rabbi Yehuda, that says it is permitted to marry after 18 months. Lefish, right? What happened? Linaseh b'chamisha asar chodesh. She's going to be permitted to marry after 15 months. Why? Lefish ein hachalav ne'akar ele le'achar shlosha chodashim. Because the milk does not become spoiled, okay, due to any possible pregnancy till after 3 months. Okay? Amar Ula. And Ula now says, halacha ka Rabbi Yehuda. He paskins the law is like Rabbi Yehuda. Va'amar Mar Ukva. And Mar Ukva says, Li hitir Rabbi Chanina laseit la'achar chamisha asar chodesh. And he tells from his personal experience, and remember we always say that when one cites a maaseh, it's to give further stronger proof to a halacha, okay? That he says, Rabbi Chanina permitted me to marry a nursing woman, we have to understand here, okay, who was, certainly we assume a widow, okay, for the moment, okay? Namely, how long? After the 15 months. So that shows that Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel's position was accepted as the halacha.
For a while.
Okay. All right. At this point, okay, what happens? Another story. All right. We got a lot of Maisalach here. Arise the Abai, the sharecropper that worked for Abai. Okay. Atalakame de Abai came before Abai. Amarle, and he said to Abai the following: Ma'ule ares b'chamisha asar chodesh. What about the possibility of betrothing a woman who is a widow, a nursing mother, after 15 months? What's the situation there? Amarle, Abai says to him, Chada, on the one hand, the Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. When we have a machloket between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, halacha ka Rabbi Yehuda, the law follows Rabbi Yehuda. Va'od, and furthermore, Beit Shammai u Beit Hillel, when we have a machloket between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, I'm going to say here usually, okay, halacha ka Beit Hillel. The law is like Beit Hillel. Va'amar Ula, and Ula says halacha ka Rabbi Yehuda, and who, okay, and in these situations, Ula is saying us that the law follows Rabbi Yehuda. Va'amar Mar Ukva, and Mar Ukva then also tells us, okay, the following: Li hitir Rabbi Chanina laseit lachar chamisha asar chodesh. That Mar Ukva is saying, my personal experience was that Rabbi Chanina permitted me, okay, to marry, and I'm emphasizing that phrase here, to marry after 15 months, which again would seem to show that Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel's decision was appropriate. Okay, but notice, that's why I emphasize, what were they saying here? Where the question was to marry, but the sharecropper was not asking about marrying; he was asking about betrothing. So let's see what happens. Okay, as we go on. Okay, and what was Abaye's answer? Okay, Kol shekain da'at li'ares, all the more so that you should be able to betroth. So that seems to be Abaye's answer. However, as the Gemara continues, we're going to see further, or as they say in French, weiter. Ki ata lekame de Rav Yosef. When, okay, well, there's the other French too, like avu titave avu. Okay, ki ata lekame de Rav Yosef. And when Abaye came before Rav Yosef, and we, okay, and he was Abaye's, one of Abaye's teachers, number one, and that it's important for us to be familiar with. And number two, okay, the other aspect is the fact that, remember that we saw here earlier before we changed the Amud, it says, okay, lo titares v'lo tinaseh, that was the view of Rabbi Meir for 24 months. Okay, now we go on. Ki ata lekame de Rav Yosef, and when Abaye came, and we assume Abaye told him the story. Oh, you know what? I just had a paskin for my etc. 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 What happens? Amarle, Rav Yosef tells him the following: Rav u'Shmuel da Amrei Travaihu, that Rav and Shmuel, the two of them, both said, Tzricha lahamtin esrin va'arba'a chodesh chutz miyom shenolad bo v'chutz miyom shenit arsabo, that the must wait 24 months with the exception of the day in which the child was born and the day on which become betrothed. Now, what does that tell us? Abaye gave the wrong psak. Okay, now what happens? Rahat batre, tlata parse, Abai ran after the sharecropper for 3 parsangs. Va'amre la parsa b'chola. And others say he ran after him 1 parsang, but in the sand. Okay, and it's a lot harder to run in the sand. Okay, right? What happened? Velo adrache, and he didn't overtake him.
So the guy blew it.
Okay, Amar Abaye.
Someplace here, earlier time, I had some notes that adds up to 7 miles.
Could be
Parses, they-
parsang, right?
How long is a parson?
Parsangs were Persian measurement. I think that were slightly different. It was a little more than a mile, was 1 parsang, like 1.25 miles, something like that. Okay, so it's very possible that 1.5 miles, whatever,
So we're talking like 5 miles.
5 to 7 miles. I mean, it's a considerable distance. Okay, to try to catch the guy and
Stop the wedding.
okay, stop the betrothal. All right, okay. Hi, milta de amur Rabbanan, says the Gemara. Amar Abai, and the Abai therefore says, this is something that was said by the rabbis. Okay, in other words, afilu bi'ata bekutcha, even if you were to a situation where you were permitting someone egg in kutach, okay, lo lishrei inish b'makom rabbe, that a person should not permit, in other words, give psak in the place where his teacher is present. Lo mishum demechaze ki af kiruta. It's not because one is showing disrespect, okay? Ela mishum delo mistaye milda lememra. Why? Because we're saying it's very possible that he's not going to render the answer correctly. Daha anahava gamirna le lahad Rav Shmuel, because this item, okay, I had learned it at one point, the statement of Rav and Shmuel, afilu hachi lo mistaye li milta lememar, but nevertheless, Abaye admits, I either forgot it or I did not say the appropriate answer, nevertheless. Right? Okay. Tanu Rabbanan. Okay, how are we doing? Okay. Tanu Rabbanan, a new Braita. Okay, now, Ted, this is going to come back to an earlier question that you asked. We said, remember, that a woman bringing in the Mishnah said the Mishnah, if she brought a certain number of female servants, she could give one over to a wet nurse. Okay, we're assuming that the wet nurse gets paid, okay, if they're hired to do that professionally. All right, Tanu Rabbanan, Natna benalami neket. The woman gave her child to she hired a wet nurse. Okay. Okay. O gemalto, or she finished weaning the child. O mate, in this case, or the child died. Muteret linaseh miyad. Then she is permitted to marry immediately. Rav Papa v'Rav Huna b'rei de Rav Yoshua savur l'me'avad uvda ki hamat mita. And the two of them, Rav Papa and Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yoshua, thought to decide to carry out a situation, in other words, to paskin on a particular case in reality, like this particular learning, like this, okay, and let her proceed to remarry. Amra laho hahu savta, and an elderly woman came along and told the two of them, Bididi, Hava Uvda, Va'asali Rav Nachman. The same situation occurred to me. In other words, I was a younger woman, I was nursing, and the same situation happened to me. but I was prohibited from marrying, okay, by Rav Nachman. Aini, is that really the case? Asks the Gemara. V'harav Nachman shara lahola be reish galuta. But we know that Rav Nachman permitted the women of the Reish Galuta's household to remarry under those similar circumstances, particularly when they gave the child over to a wet nurse and hired a wet nurse to do so. Okay? Right? So the Gemara, now remember, the implication would be ordinarily she would be prohibited to become engaged or remarried for a 2-year period. Okay? Now what happens? The Gemara tells us, Shani be reish galuta de lo hadar baho. And the situation of the women of the household of the reish galuta was different because the wet nurse would not renege on the contractual arrangement to nurse the child for the full 2 years.
It goes on her resume.
Okay.
She's the official nurse
Okay.
for the Reish Galusa.
Okay, in any case, Amar Laho Rav Papi. And so Rav Papi then turns and says to Rav Papa and Rav Huna Berei de Rav Yoshua, Va'atun lotes baruha meha zetanya. And the two of you, he says to them, don't you maintain, I'm going to use that translation, or aren't you of the opinion, in other words, maintaining, don't you hold by, okay, that which was taught, Harei shaita ridufa lelech lebeit avia, if it was such that this woman went to visit her parents or her father's household for a lengthy period of time, O shahayala kaas beveit ba'ala, or there was anger with her husband, okay? O shahaya ba'ala chavush beveit ha'asurim, or her husband was held prisoner in the prison.
And dies.
Okay? Well, I don't have that shot. Okay? O shahalach ba'ala l'medinat hayam, or her husband traveled on overseas. O shahaya ba'ala zaken o chaleh, o shahayta akara uzkena, or her husband was elderly or sick, or she was unable to give birth, or elderly, or an ilonit, incapable of sexual reproduction, uktana, or a minor, vahamapelet, or she miscarried, achar mitat ba'ala, after the death of her husband, v'she'ena ru'uya leled, or for some other reason that she's not capable of giving birth. Kulan tzrichot lahamtin shlosha chodashim. All of them have to wait, I'm going to say at least 3 months.
After the death of
the husband, Divrei Rabbi Meir. That again is the view of Rabbi Meir. Okay, so in that situation, all of those, when we don't even have the concern of her possibly being married and becoming pregnant, okay, and that would affect her milk.
No,
Okay.
this is where
And
the husband dies.
yes, I
You have to
understand
wait
that.
3 months so
But
you know
that's-
who the father is. This
That's
has
true. I'm
nothing
going to
do
get
with
to that.
milk.
I'm going to get to that. Okay. All right. Okay. So that's aside our argument before of having to wait the time was because we were concerned lest the woman marry and the pregnancy affect her milk.
No,
Now we're giving a different rationale.
no,
Okay.
also a different time frame.
Okay,
Now
it's a
only
right.
3
It's in a
months.
different issue. Now we're saying in all of those situations where we don't even worry about any pregnancy situation, but we have a different time frame. The woman must still wait 3 months after the death of the husband, because we're concerned
She might-
that were there to be a situation where she remarries so soon after the death and become pregnant, we would not know for sure who was the
Father.
the paternity of the child, whether it was from the deceased husband after 9 months, or whether it was from the new husband within perhaps 7 months. That's the situation. Okay?
How does that work with the person? If the woman can't have a child?
Oh,
Because we're saying that even though it's 99.99999% impossible, you're choshesh for that tiny possibility.
Okay. Rabbi Meir is always koshesh, questions the meat. Exactly. Right? But that's why I wanted to present it opposite the previous discussion.
It's also just a low plug.
Okay.
We don't say some cases differ from others. The overwhelming
That's not the
majority
halacha,
of married.
Right.
women
Let's
can
anyway.
give birth,
Okay.
So it's a low plug.
Right. Let's go. Rabbi Yossi matir le'areis v'linaseh miyad, as opposed to Rabbi Meir. Okay, Rabbi Yossi said permits her to become betrothed and married immediately in
Which is your reason.
in those cases. Okay. What happens? Va'amar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel. He said as follows: Halacha k'Rabbi Meir b'gezerota. No, we hold, says Rav Nachman, in the name of Shmuel, that we follow Rabbi Meir regarding these various decrees that he's made.
And that's
Okay.
why we retracted and required 24 months. for the
Okay.
missing one.
So what happens? All right. So we now come back and say, even though we saw suggestions for other time frames, it seems to be that we hold by the 24-month period. Okay, so the Gemara says, Amrele, or they said to him, Lav ada'atan. That was not in our minds. In other words, either we forgot it or we did not apply that particular learning.
Go back to the wet nurse. Before we were talking about that lineup of the mothers.
Yeah.
The wet nurse would have to take the place of the mother in that, or otherwise the child would.
Good question. I'm not sure.
What was the question?
Ted's question was, if the mother had given over the infant to the care of a wet nurse, okay? I don't know, okay? His question was, would the wet nurse have to stand in the lineup?
No. The
No, that's
situation was-
she's hired for that job.
No, the Gemara's case is the child refuses to go to a wet nurse. So the halacha is the woman is forced to nurse and then can bill her husband for her time. So this lady who is divorced says, I don't want to nurse the kid. Now you have to understand the kid would not have gone to a wet nurse. Otherwise the case wouldn't have happened. So
I
the guy
suppose.
says, maybe you try long enough with the wet nurse. Let's see if the kid recognizes you, and that's why he won't go to the wet nurse. So they do the lineup, and the kid recognizes his mother.
Well,
So then they said to her, you have
to do
nurse,
it.
bill your husband.
Vehilchata made mutar. And the law is if died, permitted. Gimalto, but if she finished weaning, asur, she's still forbidden to marry. Mar barav ashi amar, he says as follows: afilu mate nami asur, even if they died, okay, still forbidden. Dilma katla le va'azla uminsaba. Perhaps she killed the child because she wanted to marry, which is a terrible thing, and that's what the Gemara is going to tell us momentarily. Hava uvda v'chan kateh. And there once was a situation, and it actually, and she choked the child. Velo he, but not, okay, but don't paskin that view. Why? Hahi shota havai, because that woman was insane. Okay? Delo avde nashe dechan kan banayu, because it's normally the case that a woman does not choke or kill her own child. Okay, we'll go on a little bit further. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught the following Braita: Hare shenat nula ben lahanik. Okay, coming back, continuing then with the idea that somebody hired a wet nurse, okay? And she's given the child over for that purpose. Harei zo lo tinik imo lo bena velo ben chaverta. Then the wet nurse is not permitted to, in addition, nurse her own child, nor to nurse the child of another woman. Okay, why? Paska kima. Okay, in other words, we say that she set a fixed amount of food as payment, ochelet arbe, but it could be that the wet nurse requires a lot more food. Okay, what happens? Lo tochal imo dvarim, right? Haraim lechala. Right? Okay. Then it goes on. She cannot. Right? We'll get to that. Lo tochal imo dvarim haraim lechala. And we say that the wet nurse is not permitted, not allowed to eat foods that will be detrimental to the purpose of nursing the child. Hashta, here, bana amartalo. Here, clearly you said her own child, no. Ben chavertem mebaye. Is it necessary then to raise the question even about somebody else's child? Okay. Mahu detema, what are you trying to tell us? Banahu dechiye seluye. Maybe in regards to her son, her own child, she might favor that child, and therefore there would be a problem nursing the hired, okay, the child for whom she was hired, right? Mematse leit fe. Well, maybe she could produce more milk. Aval ben chaverta, but in terms of this child of the other woman, ilam dahave la mutar. Okay, if it wasn't that she was producing more, lo hava mamtsile. Maybe she would not be able to produce more. Kamash malan comes to tell us then that that's still not acceptable. Okay, so it says the Gemara coming back then. Pascha kim'a ochelet arbe. But you said that maybe the amount that was going to be paid to the wet nurse was a fixed small amount of food. And maybe that's insufficient for the wet nurse. Okay, and she needs more food, right? She needs to eat more. Mehacha, where is that going to come from? Amar Rav Sheshet mishala. It comes from the money paid to the wet nurse out of her own.
It's not enough. She has to put up her own.
She has to pay her own money.
So
okay.
If you set the job underpaid.
Right. Lo tochal imod varim haraim ma'ininhu. Okay, and then we see it says she cannot eat bad things. What examples are we going to give us? Okay, right. Ma'ininu, what examples? Amar Rav Kahana, says Rav Kahana, Kishot v'chaziz. Okay, Kagon, right? The following, like the following. Kishot v'chaziz v'dagim ktanim. Hops, okay, and v'adama. Hops and grain sprouts and small fish and earth. Okay. Abai Amar says Abai, afilu kara v'chavusha, even squash or quince. Rav Papa Amar says Rav Papa, afilu kara v'kufra, a palm and unripe dates. Rav Ashi Amar says Rav Ashi, afilu b'macha v'har sina, even kutach and fish hash. Okay, all right. So we're seeing all these. Minahu piske chalva, minahu achrei chalva. Okay, in some ways they stop the flow of the milk. In some ways they turn the milk sour the milk. And I think we're going to stop right there today. All right, and we'll pick up tomorrow with some of these other.
So if you have a
new items.
Wife, knows microgreens, which are sprouting.